Wednesday, another night, another education with Zahntechnique and Veronica and Alex here. Tonight we talk about implant overdentures, the analog and the digital way. So quick housekeeping for the beginning. So our removable series, whoever is kind of joining us the first time, it's already the fourth module, right? So you see here in our little calendar, or a little schedule here, we started in August about the basics, analog, digital, removable. Now we have overdentures. Next time we talk about telescopes, and the last module is going to be the attachment bar solutions. So why are we doing this? Because we realized that some of our clients, or some of our dentists, especially in general, even also dental technicians, treating removable cases not as they would like to treat maybe a veneer case, right, or a fixed case. And it's just because I think it's a more sensitive protocol what we have to follow to really are successful in removables. But in reality, removable cases are one of the most important cases in dentistry because many complex workflows starting with a partial or a denture. So keep that in mind, and it's a really important workflow, really important restoration. So, and we would love to make you more comfortable with that. So let's go into the weeds. Before we do that, quick conflict of interest. So Veronica and me, we both have no financial interest in that lecture, also our company and our family members. And I want to talk about myself. So who does not know me? My name is Alexander Wünsche. I'm from Germany and I moved to the United States in 2009. And since 2010, I'm with Zahntechnique. And my wife, Danielle, and my business partner, Danielle, we took over Zahntechnique in 2014 when the previous owner retired. Zahntechnique is a high-end boutique dental laboratory focusing on very complex and very aesthetic restorations. We're treating basically every case like it would be our own grandmother or mom or dad or family member, basically. So that's our philosophy. So everything is very patient-specific dentistry, what we do. And I'm more excited to introduce everybody now to Veronica. For everybody who joins us the first time, Veronica, want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Good evening. Yes, I'm Veronica. I'm originally from the Czech Republic, from Prague. So my accent is slightly different than Alex's.
Just slightly.
Slightly. I joined Zahntechnique in May of this year. I had a small removable boutique lab in Maine. Some of you may know me from there, but I moved here in 1993. And I was working for 10 years in a maxillofacial prosthodontic office in Portland. And then, you know, my daughter grew up and I decided it was time for a change of lifestyle and some career changes as well. So I joined these guys and I love being here.
Yeah, we love to have you here, believe me. So Veronica and me, we know each other, Danielle, Veronica, we know each other since over 10 years now. And we cooperating in some cases over the last few years, basically. And actually, I'm super happy to have her here now finally. And we can actually really rock it here. It's really cool. So it's fun already the last few months. And I can't wait to actually experience even more fun in dentistry together with Veronica. So it's going to be a good time. But now back to the topic. We don't want to bore you with our stuff in the lab here. We want to talk about some bar attachment, dentures, overdentures, like whatever we do. Yeah, so let's kick it off, Veronica.
Okay, that sounds great. Let's do it. So first, we're going to basically recap the previous modulars that we talked about in previous sessions. So the topics were the impression taking and creating successful landmarks for a final really good restoration. We then also covered establishing a VDO and occlusion, teeth shape, teeth shades, and the importance of the try-in. In the following modular, we covered digital dentistry and digital equipment. We also talked about printing and milling.
Well, especially the partial dentures, we kind of sliced a little bit more than before. We promised obviously we want to talk about partials, right? And I did not forget, I promised the last time already going to make a bonus module. So when we're done with our series, we're going to put together a partial module where we talk about partials, analog and digital. We're going over rest seats and serving and proper seating and proper impression taking for partials. So we're going to definitely do that.
So today's agenda is basically discovering different kind of types of attachments and everything you need to know from start to finish. We will cover LTR and where these restorations are appropriate for your patients. We will also discuss materials and the procedures clinically. And we will discuss level of retention on all the nylon inserts for all the different systems, as well as metal cast reinforcement and when it's needed. So there are two different types of overdentures. There are tooth-supported ones or implant-supported ones. Under the tooth-supported ones, we're going to be looking at telescopes and Kona's concepts.
By the way, the telescopes we're actually discussing next week in our module 5, right? We're gonna one module just for telescopes. That's one of my favorites actually, so I can't wait for that.
And then when we're looking at the implant-supported dentures, overdentures, we're looking at stud attachments. We're going to talk about barbs and clips, as well as magnets and telescopes, which is Alex's favorite. So I love this graph because it really takes you through all the most widely used attachment systems and how they work and what parts and assembly are needed. Locator, I'm sure you all out there are familiar with the locator. I feel like that is the most and widely known system of attachments. And then we also have the Locator RTX now, and then we can talk about the differences between the two, because that's always like a widely asked question, like why Locator and why Locator RTX?
Yeah, what's the difference actually?
So
yeah, you want to explain, right?
Yeah, so it's the biggest difference is not only just in the color coding of the housing, but also in angle corrections. So the locator, the original locator, is used only up to 20 degrees, where you can correct the angles with the Locator RTX all the way up to 30 degrees.
That's a massive actually. 30 degrees is a lot. So I remember when we were having the challenge sometimes the locators, oh, now we have that angled abutment or that angled implant and we cannot get that over the 20 degrees, right? So then the RTX definitely was a great solution and a big help for that. And that's also a slightly different product here. That's the Novalog, right? Novalog from Straumann. It's basically it is a locator. It's the same geometry. The main difference is the coating of that material and the material itself of the kind of clips of the plastic clips that are going over the abutments. Basically the idea behind the Novalog is that the longevity is better, so it will last longer. It doesn't wear as fast, but also the housings or these inserts, they're made out of a high performance polymer, which also promises to basically not wear as fast as the nylon inserts from a locator. I don't want to say it's better or worse, or a locator is better or worse. Both have their indications, I think, and it's more like a preference from a clinician, also from a patient perspective. I personally work with both, or we work with both here in Zahntechnique, so we're happy with both actually. But one thing is, want to point out, I put it on the screen here, and you really like it, right?
Yeah. So for me, I definitely love the Novalog attachment system kit because it's very easy to start with, and it has basically all the parts that you need as well as the instruments.
Yeah, the kit is this. Yeah, I'm highlighting it right now here a little bit. Everything is in there basically to actually evaluate the case, right? Which is pretty cool. And then the Halbar attachment system, I think that's like something very traditional, goes back 30, 40 years. And it is a very well working system on a Halbar and a retained overdenture. It has its little tricks to it. It has this little kind of ups and downs, especially on the process on the lab side and the longevity. What I like on the system is very simple. You can make a simple bar. We can click on an overdenture on and off pretty easy. We can easily change out these inserts. Where I am a little bit hesitant on that specific Halbar is when the bar wears and we are down to the tightest insert. At that point, it's losing up and the bar still wears, we're done, right? At some point, we have to then, in reality, get rid of the bar and fabricate a new case, a new bar, new overdenture. So the longevity of these cases not all the time, but sometimes are not as long as you would like to have it, or we would see now on more progressive restorations or progressive cases, right? That's, I think that's your case, right?
Yes. So this is a case that's actually going to be a Doerbar, and we'll touch a little bit on the differences between the Halbar and the Doerbar through this restoration. So the original restoration was basically temporary partial dentures when the patient came in. Then the surgeon placed implants. So we had 3 implants on the upper and 3 on the lower. And here we're looking at a Doerbar. And I guess the biggest difference I would say would be that the Doerbar is not as round as the Halbar, but also there are no nylon inserts in the Doerbar. It's just basically metal that wraps around the bar.
Yeah, what I like on that metal, they're actually, you can activate them, right? You can actually bend them slightly, make it tighter. What you can bend can be de-bended, right? So over time, it'll get open a little bit. But I think the longevity of a case like this is a little bit better than with the nylon clips, because you definitely can activate these clips nicer and for a longer time, basically.
Okay, so this is actually going to be a classic locator case for a lower overdenture. And what I would like to point out here is the metal cast reinforcement, which is very important because of the forces. When you're incorporating the housings into acrylic, there's usually like more slight of a stronger force, I would say, than in your typical denture. So the metal reinforcement prevents basically the acrylic from cracking or breaking.
Yeah, I mean, for us, usually it's a rule or protocol. Every Locator overdenture will have a metal reinforcement. But like Veronica already mentioned, the acrylic can be very thin over the housings, and that's the area where usually a Locator overdenture will break.
And then now we're looking at bar retained overdenture with locators.
So that's cool, because on the difference on the bar retained overdentures, Locator retained, bar retained overdenture to a Locator overdenture, the Locator overdenture is like 50-50 implant and soft tissue supported. On the bar overdentures, we have 100% implant support, right? So these cases are more rigid. They feel more tight for the patient, or more stable than a Locator overdenture. It can feel like a little bit of a movement when the patient starts eating and biting and maybe bruxing a little bit. So different ballpark, right? There are reasons for why we do these bar overdentures. Sometimes it's angulation, and sometimes it's bite forces, especially if you look into a piece bed and so on, we'll be discussing a little bit.
I just wanted to also point out in the previous slide, you see the ovis structure. So that can be also made out of metal, or in this case, we use pectin, which is more aesthetic, depending on how much space you have.
That's pretty cool, actually, that you pointed out. So the pectin, what I like on the pectin a lot of times is if we have a very thin flange, and the metal maybe would show through, right? You have the gray into the acrylic, and it's very thin, and the opaque shows through. The pectin doesn't do that. It's bony in color. It's very dull in color, so shinier. So we don't even have to opaque it. Usually we have just a thin layer of acrylic, which will cover that color nicely, and we have a nicer aesthetic outcome. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, this was a really beautiful restoration from start to finish. So now we're looking at a patient with an implant hybrid restoration on both upper and lower. So the patient basically came in originally with lower partial temporary denture and an old full upper denture. Again, 6 implants in this case were placed on her maxilla, and then the surgeon placed 4 on the mandible. So here we have impression copings, and we're going to be doing an open tray impression. And definitely establishing a verification jig.
So why is the verification jig so important, actually? Right?
To establish the accuracy of transitioning what's exactly happening in a patient's mouth to the model.
Yeah, the passive fit, right? So
Passive
that's
fit,
like the key. So then never forget. So as soon as you have multiple implants connecting to each other, a verification check is a gold standard, right? That's you should not skip. Basically, it's a step. We can combine this step in multiple try-ins or whatsoever. We don't have this as an alone standing appointment, but definitely a verification check is a must go for full arch. Even for 2-3 unit bridges, we always do verification checks for that.
100%, because we find also sometimes we do need to do a secondary impression if you have to cut the verification gel.
Right.
So here we're going to be looking at the AP spread, so anterior posterior spread. So how is this measured? And this basically establishes how far you can have a cantilever on the bar, on the titanium bar. So the measurement is taken in the central fossa of the most anterior 2 implants, and then the distal edges of the most posterior 2 implants. And then it gets multiplied basically 1.5. And that's the final number will basically tell you how far you can extend the bar restoration
That can't be
beyond the cantilever.
right. Yeah.
So in this patient's case, actually, because she only had four implants placed in a certain area, then we were limited with the anterior posterior spread. So we had to end with a second premolar. In this case, you can also do 1 premolar and 1 molar in a restoration, but it worked beautifully for her at the end. We then did a wax try where we established the VDO, midline correction, verify the tooth shade and shape.
Yeah, I want to kind of introduce here. For some cases, it's actually easier sometimes to go the analog route to make an analog wax setup. I know we always talk about digital and everything goes digital. We do tons of digital overdentures and dentures here at Zahntechnique, but some cases I have to say they're just easier analog. They're just like we have full control over a trine. You can move teeth on the trine like you see here. There's a slight movement on the lower midline, so we can move these teeth easily over on the trine and translate it back in the lab later, basically in the lab to the models and the articulation. That's like very important to understand. The digital is fantastic and we're using it every day, but sometimes in some cases I think the analog route, or let's call it digilog, is definitely the way to go. Here what I love actually, what we do more and more is for wax trines, you're putting these locators housings in the wax trine, so you can actually put a locator abutment in the patient's mouth and you click in that wax trine on and off, which makes it very easy to try in and actually to verify video, verify aesthetics without having to screw in and screw out the whole arch basically, which the wax gets soft, teeth falling out, and you have a big challenge to try that case in basically. That's pretty cool. So that was done here.
For sure. And you don't have to incorporate every single implant in there. You can literally just do a couple, but it's helpful during the wax trying so nothing is moving.
Right, just 2 or 3, it's enough, right?
So here we basically did a wax trying over the framework and verified everything again. And this is actually a really nice case where we can point out the differences and, Mother Nature versus us trying to create this most beautiful smile and everything matches perfectly. So we basically did a lighter shade on her upper and then slightly lower value on her lower teeth, and it just turned out beautifully.
Yeah, which is actually the same what we see most of in nature. When I see patients, when they come for straight consultations here, we do photos, I see it so often that the teeth on the mandible actually are slightly either a little bit more chromatic or low in value than actually the maxillary teeth. And we see this here in this example. It's perfect mimic actually on the acrylic teeth, the natural teeth, right? We have that copy almost like of that tooth shade from upper to lower, that difference. It's really cool. And it's important to keep these things in mind, because if you imagine that picture, what you see on the left side would be an OM3 or A1 on the upper end and A1 on the lower, it's like a wall of teeth, right? Now we're creating that little kind of play between different
different dimensions.
Yeah, different dimensions with different depth basically. It looks much more natural, much nicer actually than when we do that, right? Of course, we need to have a patient they're open to that, right? There are patients there tell you, this is awful. I want to have all the same color teeth. That's then what we have to do. Oh, you love that. I know that.
Yes, I love this slide. I love color pink. No, but I just love it for the organization. Basically, you're going to a wax try-in and a bar try-in with all the important tools, all the important pieces. So it's very important be organized when your patient comes in.
Yeah,
So-
and you have to, go ahead.
Yeah, so we did we festooned and we basically verified everything again on the articulator, and we processed the final dentures, actually
Actually, here
hybrid dentures.
that's a good slide to show how we can play between the class 3 and the class 1 with opening the vertical slightly and be able to actually then come from a class 3 as long as the patient tolerates it. I think she was really tolerating,
She was,
right?
yeah.
Really moving the teeth to a certain direction that we have then a class 1.
Mhm.
Sometimes necessary or actually really a big advantage to do it. And sometimes I have to be honest, we keeping it a class 3 if the patient is his whole life in a class 3 and very comfortable with it, and aesthetically it's not disturbing, why changing, right? So that's our important things. But if you want to change it, we open the bite usually and moving the teeth out and having a class 1.
And here is
Final case.
the final case completed. This was one of my most favorite cases, I would say. This was a beautiful result.
That's a
Yeah.
big difference before and after. I mean, that's tremendously different. It's really nice. Digital process everybody's waiting for, right? So how do we all these, we just talked about, I just mentioned, I like the analog process sometimes for some cases, not for all of the cases. So how can we accomplish that in the digital world? If you remember last time when we talked about digital dentures, it's nothing different. It's the same thing, right? If that's the first webinar with us, please go to YouTube and just watch the previous modules where we explain exactly the step-by-step workflow for a digital denture, because it's the same workflow in digital overdenture, especially for locators, there's no difference. So I'll sum it together. We have basically here an existing old denture with a wash impression. The doctor has the patient's the denture in the mouth, scans the bite, scans the opposing, and then takes the denture out and scans the denture in 3 dimension in the doctor's hand. We did some border molding here. That's also important, but that's all in the previous module. Please take your time, check it out. And then that helps us to actually then import these scans, import the files, and setting up the digital molds, digital teeth, and setting up a digital denture, right? So what we see here, and that helps us then to develop actually a prototype. The prototype is nothing else than a 3D printed in tooth color, tooth shade, resin printed denture, and that kind of pre-designed basically. In this case, since it's an overdenture, we already kept the palate open, right? So we want to basically mimic what we are actually targeting to do. So that goes out to the doctor, or our client is somewhere else in the nation and will print on their own, we send them the file, and that allows them, the doctor, to take a wash impression. And you see here, very cool, actually, these little already impressions of the implants with the healing caps, right? So that's important for us to see. That's the only thing, the only difference to the regular denture. We have to see these little imprints of these implants where they're located. We don't need scan bodies. We just need to know where the implants are. And I'll show you in a couple slides why. So then that helps us then to design the final denture. And same thing of the regular denture design as an overdenture, but it's the same design process. In this specific case, we decided to mill the denture. So we're milling basically 2 pieces. One piece is pink, the other piece is a tooth bridge. And why milling? Because milling the PMMA is just very, very strong. And that allows us sometimes nowadays, actually, if you have enough thickness, we don't even put a metal reinforcement in anymore. We just keep it just the PMMA. In this case, we did the metal reinforcement. I'll show it here because that's what's the case. We're still trying around and then see how far can we go, right? Here we incorporated the metal reinforcement. So we actually opened the area of the metal reinforcement, laid the metal reinforcement in and closed it again with acrylic. So we have a nice sealed area here. And now you see why we had to scan or have impress the implant areas, because that's the area we now can actually relieve for an intraoral pickup, right? So you have the malleable reinforcement, and then here is the implants in the mouth. And by the way, we have 3 implants. Usually for the maxilla, I always recommend making 4 implants for an overdenture on locators. For the mandible, I recommend 3 implants. In this case, the patient lost 1 implant and we were not able to actually re-implant a new one. So we decided to have that tripod situation. The pace worked very nice, still in the mouth, still works very well. But ideally, we would have 4. And we're doing intraoral pickup in this case. You see here, these are, by the way, the Novalog attachments and the final smile, right? So that worked very nice. It's a very smooth process. So that's like what we're working with basically.
I would just like to add also, as much as we all love doing digital dentistry, the importance of knowledge of analog of removable dentistry
Yeah.
as your basis.
I think there is no digital without analog, right? Analog was first. And there's not the question like, what's the first, the chicken or the egg? No, analog was first.
Yeah.
I think that's not to debate. But in all processes, it's important to know every single analog process before we jump into digital. For me, one of the main reasons is, well, what if something goes wrong? The analog process always can rescue us out of the situation. And I think that's very important to always have a plan B. The plan B is sometimes analog or digilog, and we still can finish, still satisfy the patient, and still everybody's happy. So just keep that in mind. If you don't know analog process for certain ways you do digital right now, I encourage you highly to basically get these analog processes into yourself, that you at least know what to do if something goes wrong.
And we're here to also help you if you have any questions on the steps and procedures. Me and Alex both are always available. So
I'm always available. Really?
Never mind.
No, of course, we're always available 24/7. So if you have a problem, just call us and we definitely will help you.
So moving on to our next system for attachments. This is a Locator Fixed. So the patient came in basically with an upper denture. Then the surgeon placed the implants. And here we're looking at locator options. So basically the Locator Fixed is same abutment system as the regular locator. So when you need to transition sometimes a patient from a locator overdenture to a Locator Fixed, you can do that very easily. So again, locator and fixed, analog or digital.
The same thing, right? Same thing what we just discussed on the regular locator overdenture. There's always an analog and there's always a digital way now to do these things. Since you're working in overdentures, or Locator Fixed is more like a hybrid style of an overdenture, right? Because it's fixed and we have to have it hygienic, but still we also can accomplish that workflow very, very digital, very easy digital.
So here we actually use the mirror tray instead of doing a custom open tray for the final impression.
Remember mirror tray. This is like a thorough for this lecture today. That's an amazing impression tray to make life much more easy.
Very much so. And then we also then do a verification jig in this case as well.
Gold standard.
And this is the gold-plated housing, basically. I want to say gold-plated, but it's not gold-plated.
Well, it's just anodized, right? It's gold in color. It's anodized. That's the difference to the regular locator houses. They're more like silver colored than metal. That is metal too, but it's anodized. First of all, that's for an easier differentiation, right? That's the fixed. But also it's actually nicer in the denture to hide it, right?
Exactly.
And the anodized, and the color is a warmer color. It doesn't gray so much, so it's definitely a nicer aesthetic result.
So then you're basically picking up all the housings in the patient's mouth. And this is an important slide because you need to establish a specific height and insert these white plastic round, what would you say?
Washers, actually.
Yeah.
Like rubbery plastic washers. And they come in the kit. There are the kit like 4 or 6 of them in every kit.
And this is important because the heights are clearly different in this case too.
Well, important is too, if you do locator pickups, they are included in your regular locator case, locator kit, also the fixed locator kit, keep them. So the rings you don't need at that appointment, don't throw them away. Put them in a little box and collect them. Of course, not the ones that are in your mouth, but the new ones, right? You collect them in a box because of these situations. Yet, let's say you have 4 or 5 locators and you need multiple rings to kind of get that little spread of height. You maybe need more than actually there are in a kit. I think that's really important to point out. And actually, I have to go back very quick. It just crossed my mind. Why are these so important is basically they avoid undercuts underneath that cap.
Yes,
so when you do a
great
locator
point.
pickup, an intro pickup, it's very important to have them, to have these washers in there that you avoid any material going underneath and maybe the locator, or so maybe the overdenture locks into place.
Right.
That's the biggest concern many clients have, that they say, oh, I don't want to do the intro pickup because I'm afraid the denture locks in and I have to cut it out and we have to redo the case. Honestly, I don't remember any client who ever had that problem I advised with these wide rings. It's a very, very rare scenario that a overdenture would lock into when you do an intro pickup if you follow the protocol. That's very important. If you follow protocol, nothing will happen. In addition, I think it's extremely important to do the intro pickup, to not ask the lab to pick it up from the model. Why? Because of accuracy. For the locator fixed, even more important. For the regular locator case, extremely important as well. Just because for the patient's convenience in the future and your own convenience, because you just do it once, these locators, they will snap in perfectly when you do the intro pickup. If you do a model pickup from the lab, the locator overdenture will not fit to 100% and clicks in. It will fit at some sort, it will hold, but not as good as you do in intro pickup for sure.
So this is also very important when you're doing your pickup. Before you start with your locator pickup, you want to establish having a bite registration. So when you have the bite registration already done, you then start picking up your locators, and then you have your patient bite back into that established blue mousse bite in this case, or any kind of a material that you decide to use.
Basically, right?
Exactly. So you want your patient to bite into it. You don't want to get lost in space, because that could be very much of a problem.
And these are the little things, right? What I always see when I am chairside with my clients, or we supporting a client, a new client maybe who has questions how to do certain protocols. These are the little things that really helps a lot. I always say if you work more in advance to the case and prepare every single step, like that little tray what Veronica showed, the pink tray, put everything nicely in, you have full control, perfect organized. You establish occlusion and the bite before you even go into any procedure, picking up any attachments. You do that little bite, right? All these things to help you down the road to actually be done quicker at the end. That's the point. And the case looks better and the patient is more happy actually.
And here you can basically see the locators picked up and the white rings, and how nicely this separated and came out of the patient's mouth.
Cool is also, this is a very strong metal reinforcement. I think
Yes.
because of vertical space, we decided to actually have a metal contact to the gingiva, picking up the housings. And you see the one housing already has the white ring is already gone. So it's most likely stays in the mouth, so we can peel it out. And now we just have to clean it up basically and finish it.
And here you have basically different color of the nylon inserts, and the retention varies from the lightest to the hardest. I would say always start with the lightest retentive nylon insert, because a good friend of mine, great dentist in New England, we finished this locator overdenture case. He went to put it in the patient's mouth. He used very, very tight nylon inserts, and he's calling me at the end of the day. It was like 5:30, and he's like, Veronica, I could not get the denture out of the patient's mouth. I had to cut it. So this is also very important.
Yeah.
Use the lightest nylon inserts to start with, and then work your way to the.
On the Locator Fixed, actually, the Locator Fixed, the company, they will give you a chart what color you have to use for what kind of situation or indication, right? You see here, for example, for 4 implants, we see the company recommends using the four green coatings. They're ideally the right pounds of force to keep that, since it's a fixed case, to keep that in place. The 4 implants, and we see for 6 implants, different color coding, right? You have beige, and then we have 2 blues in the middle. So that's like, you should follow that protocol absolutely accurately. That's very important, right? Just because that's tested and there's scientific evidence of these results, that would be the ideal holding force of that, or holding strength of the hybrid onto the locators without the patient being able to take it out on their own, because that's the goal, right? It's a fixed case.
Okay, and then you can see the Locator Fixed tool. It actually comes with 2 attachments, but it is 1 tool overall. So different endings.
Yeah, that's the one that spreads out with the prongs, basically, what holds that plastic cap, what can take it out of the hybrid to change. And this gold one is to put it back in.
And then you have the removal tip.
Well, that's the removable lasso, actually, right? So yeah, that's pretty drastic. So here you see how a hybrid will get inserted in the patient's mouth. You see that handle where you can actually click it, and you touch the teeth on certain areas where the implants are, and you click it, and that will actually push that hybrid with 1 click onto the implant. You go across the arch with that until the hybrid is seating very stable and very strong. And you do the same thing when you remove it. You have that lasso, that loop goes underneath the intaglio, and you pull and you click, and it will pull down the restoration. Maybe not very comfortable for the patient, as far as I heard, but there are definitely advantages we're going to go over very soon.
And this is the final result for the patient. So she was happy at the end. And I would say it's a great restoration and a crossover between removable and fixed dentistry. So here we're looking at the why and the pros, and then we'll cover the cons as well. So I think one of the big parts is that it's saving cost because of the parts needed for the specific restoration. Then you're avoiding the screw excess holes, which is easier and less time consuming. You are also able to convert a 4 implant overdenture into a fixed denture. And the same abutment and workflow as the original locator, that's also very important because it gives you a variety, basically, of options.
Right. I think for me, looking into a case like this and doing a lot of fixed hybrids, a lot of overdentures, different materials and so on, I think the biggest pro is really literally you can replace a screw retained with no screw access holes, right? There's nothing to fill. That's really cool. And the next one is, I think, the saving cost part. I mean, that's definitely you save a lot of cost with that. That's for sure definitely a big winner here. On the con side, though, I mentioned already, it's uncomfortable to remove. And you definitely, I wouldn't say necessarily a cons, but maybe for some of you guys, you would see it as a cons, is the chairside pickup. If you don't do it on a regular basis, definitely you have to be comfortable with picking up attachments chairside in the mouth to be comfortable and do it on a regular basis. Also cons is maybe the limitation of materials. Ideally, these cases are not done in zirconia, for example, or so. It's definitely done in acrylic. It's just easy to repair if something happens to it, and it's definitely a nicer situation. And what's also important is on the Locator Fixed specifically is the limitations and indications. We have to have a hygienic design. So that's a fixed case. So we have to be able to really clean underneath the intaglio surface. We have to be able to really have a perfect clean surrounding to be able for the patient to be able to use the water pick, floss, and so on, to have everything very clean. That limits the restoration already, because if you go from a regular overdenture with 4 implants and locators, now we want to transition that to a fixed. We have to make sure there is no transition line visible afterwards, because we have to remove the flange, right? that's important. These restorations, as Locator Fixed, do not provide this the lip support we may have on a Locator Overdenture, right? So keep that in mind. Treatment planning is key here, but not every overdenture or Locator Overdenture can be transitioned to a fixed case. That's very important. Talk to your laboratory, provide us photos and videos of the patient, and before we promise something what maybe cannot be done. Yeah, conclusion. Overdentures are a great solution for hygiene concerned patients. I think that's for me always the biggest deal because I see cases, and I can't wait for the telescopic module actually, because we have a couple of really crazy cases there. I think that's one of the biggest deal. We can provide very, very hygienic solutions with overdentures, what we sometimes cannot do with screw retained hybrids or FP3 basically, right? It's ideal for cases to high transition zones, aesthetic concerned patients. They have a high smile line. We don't want to remove so much bone. Hey, let's do an overdenture. We can hide that transition zone. It's sometimes a bailout too, right? If we tried to do a hybrid and we couldn't do it because of removing of bone, length of implants, and so on, our patients has obviously a hyperactive lip and will show everything. So we rather do overdenture to hide it, basically. Analog digital workflows are possible, right? Or Digilog, right? Which is really cool. So we nowadays can almost every case solve in analog, Digilog, or fully digital workflows, with some exceptions, of course, right? And then, as I mentioned already before, in the summary of the fixed, Locator Fixed, we have limitations in material, right? So we have to be clear: an overdenture should not be in ceramic. Why? Because the 45-year-old patients from today, who is very agile, maybe is not as agile than the patient 70, right? And the restoration drops in the sink and will just shatter, right? So keep that in mind. It's very important to know your patients. And I would always recommend using a material which is easy to repair or even have a spare, easy to exchange. Yeah, here I want to say thank you. And for joining us for our module 4. It was a pleasure for us to have you together here. And we want to see if there are any questions. Danielle is waving. There's no questions today. This is fantastic. I love that. So, well, if there are any questions in the future, please keep in mind, you can always email us. You can always get in touch with us to have maybe further questions later on. Message us on YouTube or per email. And here is our QR code for the CE credits. So I want to say thank you to Dental CE Solutions to help us very actively with the CE credits that we have for this module. So please utilize the QR code. And yeah, and then I want to make you guys or prepare you guys for next time, right? September 25, telescopes. And I can't wait for that, actually.
Yeah,
so that's going to be
his
fun.
favorite.
Yeah.
My favorite module.
I'm talking about this all the time already. It's his favorite. And then the last one will be attachment bar solutions. I'm super excited when we are done with these modules, not because I'm over it, no, because actually we are creating and preparing already the next ideas you want to do webinars on. So our minds are going really not crazy, but are very, very active to hyperactive. So we're looking really forward to doing this more often. We have a good setup here and it's actually fun. It's really cool. So maybe the Wednesdays will be our webinar Wednesdays, maybe not every week, but at least maybe every month or something like that. So just keep following us, keep checking it, and we'll get you out there. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.